Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call to order the City Council meeting for noon on August 5th. So the purpose of this meeting, as it's been relayed to me, is for a brainstorming session. So I expect this opening of the meeting to be the most formal part. A roundtable might be more conducive to the discussion, but we wouldn't be able to get everyone's audio. So with that, what I've passed around, I asked everyone on the City Council to submit any issues that you wanted to talk about. And I've gone ahead and put them on this. I don't want to call it agenda. You'll note that nothing is numbered. They're just there as talking points to help people sort of focus and recall what it is that they want to be talking about. So at this point in time, I think it's best I don't expect, no one should be hitting buttons, waiting your turn to talk. Let's just have a free-flowing conversation the way we would if we were just having a roundtable discussion. And so with that, I'll ask if anyone had anything specifically that they wanted to talk about first.
You want to run through the list?
No.
Top to bottom?
Let's start with the first one.
Okay. The new budget process.
So what did Marion have in mind for you?
I got the words new budget process.
Well, if she's not here to tell us, then we probably, or what she was thinking about this, did she? I don't know that.
Yeah.
Does anyone know?
I do not know.
The best that I could figure is I have said that I want a new budget process. I don't know what there is to talk about that. I was prepared to answer questions, but the overarching idea is that the way that information should be displayed should be a little bit different than it has in years past. It's kind of hard to track revenues. We will have to necessarily now handle things different with the capital improvement fund and the police and fire fund in the way each department gets its revenue. It's conceivable that departments could get their revenue from the general fund, from the police and fire fund, from the capital improvement fund. So we'll be showing revenues in a different way. And a lot of the budget process, I think, is going to be different in-house as opposed to past years. But in the absence of questions,
I'd like to see on the budget thing, just, for me, I had a difficult time keeping
hear?
up with.
Some of the softer voices up there.
if you guys can just make sure the microphone is pointed toward your mouth,
Right.
unless you're chewing and eating, in which case you can pull the microphone away from your mouth.
Nothing to vary about the content other than just the way we seem to have been doing it. For me, we bounce back and forth so many times in this page or that page and whatever, and I absolutely lost track to what we were really doing, and so I felt a little dumb to go back and have to. Would you repeat that again, or how? In other words, if we can categorize it and move from one process to the next process, so that we come out at a point. I mean, I know it's confusing, but for me, I just walked out. I'll vote for anything because I didn't know what I was really.
Are you talking about the budget?
Yeah. And the budget process, isn't that what we're talking about?
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Okay. That it was just, it didn't seem to have a continuous flow to where I could group it together and really understand, this is this and this is this and that's that. So that's all I'm saying. I mean, I was confused. I don't know. Maybe I was the only one that was. So that's all I'm saying.
Well, it's grouped by department, so what other grouping are you talking?
Well, we talked about either infrastructure first or what we wanted to do for that. Then we wanted to do we had payroll, and then we had expenditures for the individual departments or whatever it was but to categorize it and maybe add it up, I don't really know. I mean, I didn't. I had even asked the mayor sometime maybe we could have a class to learn how to understand the budget better. I mean, I'm telling about my own inadequacies. All I'm saying. I'm not criticizing at all.
There will be,
How dare you not criticize?
Yeah, really.
every 2 years, the AML puts on a budget workshop for newly elected officials. So that's going to be this fall in October.
If you could get your microphone a little
So
closer
that will
to
be
your
this
mouth,
fall
please.
in October. The AML is going to have a budget workshop. Did you go to the planning and zoning one that they had? I know
No.
Tierney went. So it's going to be
that budget workshop.
yeah. So
It is very
in October they'll have it's 5 or 8 hours. I forget how many hours, but it's
Oh, at the Municipal League?
at the Municipal League in
Okay.
North Little Rock. So yeah, we can sign up with.
Well, I
Madam
think that,
Tina.
yeah, it would be helpful. I mean, they have theirs if we follow what they do. I mean, if they're gonna teach one thing and we're gonna do something else, that's all I'm saying, but.
I attended that. It wasn't as helpful as I would have hoped.
Really?
Yeah, I was hoping they'd kind of give some specifics and, just as far as a process to get you through it, and they didn't really go into that.
Well, I would think every city probably has a different process,
Yeah.
but I thought it was informative generally, I
I
thought
think
it
you
was.
were in that one with me. I'm not sure.
Probably so.
But,
So budget processes are handled very differently from city to city. Some cities have a budget committee, which is not the entire city council. Very few
Yeah.
cities have something like where we have, where the entire city council goes through the budget.
I like the way we do it.
Which is an option, but then that means there's people not going to be there, and
I have a problem with.
I get the feeling that more people want to be there, not less.
Maybe if we moved it in here or had a bigger spot where more people
Well-
would be comfortable if they
We
attended.
have to record going forward. So is that right? So most meetings will probably be in here
Or recorded.
or recorded.
We have additional ways to record if they're in the blue room.
Swallow first
don't-
and then.
Just do.
We are able to record our meetings if they're held in the blue room as well.
my biggest problem with our budget process is we've always, the mayor's always brought a budget to us that's totally unbalanced, and he basically throws everything in there that I think the city directors bring him. And then it's kind of up to us to cull it out, and we're not the experts. And what I've always lobbied for is for the mayor to bring something in that's balanced, that's basically what he wants. And then maybe a list of things that he left out or was considering or whatever for us to take a look at. But the idea of bringing something in that's maybe already $1 million out of budget, out of balance, has always just really
Now,
bothered
I
me.
don't know that we've ever had one that was only $1 million out of.
Yeah, it's more than that. Yeah.
That's part of it. I think the goal should be that the mayor's responsibility is to present a budget that the mayor can feel happy if the council just approved it as is.
Exactly.
And so one of my goals has been to wean some things out, put them on a to-do list, and if the council wants to start adding back in things as opposed to trying to take things out, then that might be a better way. I've stopped short of saying that that is my goal completely, because one thing I learned is that every day that I'm here, I go, oh, we really need this and we really need that. But my goal is to do more pruning and have a more guided discussion, which might help for Councilmember Holt and others. In the past, for those that haven't sat through the budget sessions, we basically sit down, department heads come in, give their reports, and then everyone from the sort of city side sits back and says, okay, what do you guys want to talk about? And one moment we're talking about a particular line item in animal control, and then the next moment we're talking about a fire truck that may be needed in 4 years, and then the next moment, and so having, I think, a little more structure to that process could be helpful. And then I've seen it as, I think it's the mayor's job in, while receiving help of the department head, to push for whatever's in the budget being proposed, if that makes sense.
One thing that I think will help is with the long-term planning that we've been talking about, adding a list of things that we'll be having to do long-term and, what their costs will be. And that way we could line them up. And that way, if we've got a year, okay, we've got some extra budget, let's pull the top of the list and let's get that knocked out.
That may have been what Marion's thoughts were, too.
That's kind of what I
Well, we got
think,
the
yeah.
capital fund now.
Yeah.
Have we passed that? Mm-hmm. It's been 3 weeks, y'all. We had a 3-week break.
You've been on vacation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what that's, in part for too. to
Right.
Plan long term.
Well, that 5-year plan, Marion's that may have been what she meant when she submitted this.
Well, I'm glad you're thinking along those lines, because that's always been a nightmare for me. It just, it's kind of a free-for-all, like you said, so.
Yeah, I agree.
Go from fire trucks to paper clips. Yeah, a little bit of a jump.
So courthouse, we're moving on.
I just wanted to point out that in the code section, and I'm sure Caleb's familiar with this, but it does mention that that there should be an estimate of all capital projects to be undertaken within that budget year and within the next 5 succeeding years. I don't know if that's, I haven't been here, so I don't know if that's been taking place, but hopefully we'll be able to do that. And then there'll be those, that's the long-term planning you've been asking for all along, so. It is in the
Well, there it
code.
is. Well, there it is. Okay.
It's law, you have to do that.
Yeah, there you go. We have to be responsible for that information now that you've brought it to our attention, Madam City Attorney.
You are presumed to know everything in the code, just like every other citizen in Maumau.
I think one,
Well, I do now. That was the only
do
thing,
now.
that's the only thing I
that
didn't
was the
know.
last thing.
That was it.
I think there was one year that the mayor at least gave us a list of, in fact, it was a long list of maybe 20, 25 items of just any imaginable capital expenditure he felt like was going to come up in the next 5 to 10 years. And that was sort of helpful because it gave you an idea of what all's lurking out there. I mean, that was better than nothing for sure.
That's true.
So.
So as long as we're thinking about just going down the list, which is I thought the whole reason we had this meeting was to not do that. But the next item on the list is thoughts and plans for the old courthouse
So that's the one over there by the old car wash? Okay.
on 100 Millwood, the old police and fire station, jail.
So we got the appraisal
Courthouse.
back. It was what, 900, 1.1? Do you remember?
No.
Okay. It's a valuable piece of property that's sitting there.
Remember either.
Yes. So one of the big holdbacks that we've had is there were two reasons that Mayor Watson didn't put this on the market before the first, well, once it became empty. The first reason was because the law changed in 17, I want to say, to make it so that you had to do it by bid or by auction. We were unclear as to how you'd sell a piece of property of that value by auction, absent listing it, setting a really high reserve, waiting for someone to be interested in it, and then holding an auction at that point in time with a known reserve amount. I believe the law changed in this year to allow it to be sold for real property to be sold in more areas.
I think we have to, so we've been looking at this issue for a little while. And I think we probably need to pass an ordinance to do that again, I didn't look at it yesterday, so I don't remember, but, I think if you're going to do it not by bid, you just pass an ordinance and say, this is how we're gonna handle real property.
Wasn't sure what it was. The second reason was there is this, someone claiming ownership of part of that building or the part of the property that the building was on. The city's position has been that it's ours. But before taking it to market, it was trying to get the other person to sort of relinquish their claim or at least get a clear, bright line rule that it was ours. Primarily, I guess the assessor's office was indicating that it was not ours, that it belonged to someone else. And I believe that has now been taken care of, and it should be listing that property on pages and such as being owned by the city. I've tried to set a meeting several times with this, multiple times, and have been unsuccessful while we hunted for some notebook that was allegedly given to the city some years back.
Starting in April. We've been trying to get a meeting on it since April.
Yeah. But it looks like we're further, I'll leave that to the city attorney and probably for a time that's not at a meeting to make sure if she feels comfortable saying that we can go ahead and try and do whatever it is we want to do. But real property is, of course, under the control of the city council. And so the better question is what the council thinks we should do with it.
It's
Or why have it sitting empty?
I'm for selling it.
Yeah. It's a valuable piece of commercial property that somebody could redevelop. I don't know if the city has any purpose for it.
If you could get the microphone.
I don't know if the city has any purpose for it unless we wanted to do something with it, but it's a valuable piece of
Need to
property.
move the sign.
If you would like to make a comment, just come on up to
With
the
the LED
microphone.
lights.
State your name and address the first time.
John Todd, 145 Orleans. There's two pieces of property or two items on that piece of property that you got to figure out what to do with them. One is the city sign, and the other is the antenna. The antenna may be tied into your 911 system.
I believe that is completely not being used anymore. Is that correct, or is it still used? Chief, do you know? Chief?
Fire department, we weren't using them, but they were on the call-out for the volunteers.
It's all moved now? Yeah. So the sign, I assume, if we sold it, would just come down.
It used to be
If you could state your name and address for the
Roach
record.
Johnson, 38 Fairway Woods Circle.
Thank you, sir.
And there used to be a land that the city owned for a road that came over to Club Manor.
Yeah, so there's actually,
It's part of the,
for those that don't know, if you look at what that property is, it's actually two properties. There's kind of the property where the actual building is and the parking lot, and then there's what I'll call an L. It's this buffer around that
Yes.
area that I didn't know it was for a road. It doesn't really strike me as a great place for a road, so close to Millwood there. But I would assume that that property would be more marketable with both of those sold together.
Once y'all can resolve what you need to resolve, we've got a lot of other things we could do in the
Yeah.
city. So,
And really, getting the assessor's office, and Scott Grummer played a big part in tackling this. They've actually only on Thursday or Wednesday of last week finally updated it. So it's something that's being worked on, but like everything else, nothing's ever as easy as it seems.
I guess there's not any kind of a future building site we might need for something that maybe is in the back of somebody's mind, or I don't know. man.
Who owns the car wash there? And does it still operate?
Oh yeah, they came in a few years ago and redid it.
Oh.
Now it's not. It's better. It's in a lot better shape than it was. You can always think of things that could go there. The problem is what would go there. What do we have the money for? What are the needs? I think that at some point in Maumellon's future, there ought to be a separate court building or its own special place. The problem is that it always seems like there's something that would serve the residents better before you ever got to a court building. But on Tuesdays afternoon, this place takes on a very different feel, right? It's now court time. So
Well, that's a discussion for the remodel, I would think, is having court here. And I get court has its own specific spot in the plans, right?
correct.
For here.
Correct. Well, they're downstairs. The current plans, and for those that don't know, if you want to know kind of what we're thinking so far with the City Hall remodel, there's a public hearing Wednesday from 4 to 7. It'll be in here. It's just kind of like our standard project public hearing, so you can stop in and take a look at it. But there are some plans for downstairs, but I think by and large, they just need a few walls put up. We're not
To create the courtroom. That's what you're saying?
for downstairs.
For
Yes, for the
downstairs.
court where the
Okay.
courtroom is.
Or to separate off, like right now, the restroom doors are like right by the judge's bench in my area, and it's a bit uncomfortable with people, I mean, and noise and all those things. So mainly to make it a little separation from the restrooms to the actual courtroom.
And I think there had
Sound
been
too-
discussion at one point in time about that tract of land over by the police department and fire department being used for a court in the future, is what my understanding of that sort of center was supposed to be. That was way before my time, but that's what I've heard. And again, I only brought that up because it's the only thing that I could think of on a long-term plan that comes to mind at this moment of what the city might use that for. And quite frankly, I don't know that that's the best use for that property, a courthouse. And I don't think a courthouse is what I'm pushing for. Don't leave this thinking I'm pushing for a courthouse. But I think at
Well,
some
just say
point,
we need
theoretically, it
one.
ought to be a different.
I mean, what's a city without a courthouse?
And that piece of property, though, is in, I think, in somebody else's best hands that's privately owned because of the location versus the city. I think we could,
It's a great retail location.
yeah, I think we could maximize more out of that from a city standpoint, not owning that piece of
Turn it
property.
into a tax generator.
And we do just have court once or sometimes twice a week right now, so it's not like it's being used every day.
And again, not a priority for me anyway.
Oh, I think we need a great big one with marble floors and, beautiful oak. Yeah, big.
If we can get it
Dome
with
when you
grants
walk
and
in.
donations, I'll help hire the architects. Did the other, was there anything else on that, or do you want to just roll on down?
We go ahead and roll.
Roll on.
Keep working, that's good.
Roll on. The next item on here was future roundabout at Country Club Parkway, White Oak Crossing in Counts Massey. Chad, that was put on there by you. What are your thoughts?
One of my suggestions. So I'm an eternal optimist, and I really want to see Maumelle do well out there, right? Shocking. And so two of my things, and really this one kind of ties into my next point, but we spent $18 million on the new interchange, and our access point to that's going to be a stop sign out of Maumelle to get there. And so I just really think it is in our city's best interest to help that end of town grow, to prioritize connecting Country Club Parkway, White Oak Crossing, and Counts Massey. I just think it's important for that to happen. If you've been out there lately, you've noticed that that triangle of property by the ball fields has been cleared and ready to be developed, and that development will start very soon for that commercial business that's going in there. So, we've got to help our residents move around better, and one of the reasons I wanted to help the city when I even ran for office is I wanted to be proactive rather than reactive. And I think being reactive in this case would be waiting until November and looking at the stop sign and going, oh yeah, there's all that traffic they said we'd have in 2024. I didn't believe that 5-year deal. I mean, I appreciate the numbers that they gave us where they said this is what it would look like by 2024, this is what it would look like by 2029. My 2024 idea is what it's going to look like in the winter of 2021.
Oh, I think it's going to be like that day one.
Yeah.
When they first open the interchange,
Yeah.
we're going to have,
And y'all have heard me say before, yeah, water finds the path of least resistance. It's once people figure out, wait, I've got my own dedicated lane to 430 South if I go this way, people are going to start flowing that direction.
Right.
And so I know we won't have a new roundabout built by this winter, but I just really want us to move forward and help that end of town succeed. So,
I'm on the same page as you.
Yeah.
I agree with you completely, and I think it's something we really need to start addressing sooner rather than later.
yeah.
but I don't know if, we're talking about this roundabout here at Club Manor in Odom costing, what, 1.3 million? Is that what we said, roughly?
It's 1.1 plus relocation.
Right, so,
I
yeah.
did talk to the legal counsel for Entergy today. I tried to call him last week a couple times and just was able to talk to him today and sent him a case citation to look at. Their argument is that they actually installed that before there was a franchise agreement. That equipment has been there a good long time, and he's going to send me some documentation on that. And so, according to our franchise agreement, it doesn't really address pre-existing property. So that is their argument. I sent him a case citation that's more recent regarding public necessity and how it shouldn't be on the taxpayer to fund that. But that discussion is ongoing, but it's nowhere close to resolution right this moment.
And I see these two issues as separate to some degree because.
Well, I do
from-
too,
yeah.
but I mean, if we're going to pay
Well,
for, I mean, the one you're talking about is probably going to cost as much.
No, I've been asking a lot of questions from just various folks, and a lot of the issues with the one that we've been discussing at Club Manor is the location and all the things involved with traffic. Out there, you're talking about there's a lot of ground there where the new roundabout will be built that nothing's traveling on right now. So you would not have to move traffic around as much during the process of construction. And
If we do it before the traffic is there.
yeah, so.
So
Well,
it's
that's-
always more expensive to phase something because you have to keep certain lanes open, which means that sometimes you're designing with phasing in mind and not necessarily what's the quickest or
And that's what we
cheapest
have
way
to
of
do
doing it.
here.
That's what you have to do unless you want to just close off Odom and make everyone from Maumelle Valley go out the north,
Well, I think
which
I
is
think that's-
possible.
I think that's the fear of most people in the construction
Yeah,
process.
no. So it would be open the entire time is the idea. The other roundabout though is unique, and we obviously haven't got quotes. I've talked to people that say you can build a roundabout for $50 and a shovel, and I've talked to people that say they have to be lined with gold and everything else in between. It depends on how many lanes there are. So the Club Manor Odom South roundabout has 2 lanes traveling through, at least on the Odom side, and then 1 cutting from Club Manor. And so you can shrink that down to a 1-lane roundabout that's going to be cheaper. The
I think we all
issues with
agreed
the
that was
other.
doable, though. A 1-lane roundabout. I think we all agreed at one point.
Correct,
that
but
was-
so
have
with
it mer- have
the
the
roundabout
Odom
at the
merged?
other end
No,
of
no, no.
town, maybe a different deal because there's only 1 lane on Country Club Parkway. There's only 1 lane on Counts Massey, so you wouldn't have to be 2 lanes. So it'd
I
be
gotcha.
cheaper than that.
Yeah, these
That-
designs are like apples and oranges. It can be
the
completely
pump
different.
station might prove to be interesting,
There you
and
go,
there's some
I couldn't-
designs that
I
are.
couldn't remember what we called it.
Yeah, the pump
Yeah, you gotta think
station
about
would be it. So, but some of the elements of this are that it borders Maumelle and North Little Rock. I met with Mayor Joe Smith, and our goal is to jointly apply to Metro Plan for a grant for that roundabout. That if we get the money from Metro Plan's an 80-20 match, and we can rock and roll. And that 20% would be divvied up between us and North Little Rock. I think North Little Rock says, well, technically the roundabout's in Maumelle, but we say, well, it's joining North Little Rock on certain parts. So that's an idea, and we'd have, I think, more success trying to get Metro Plan money. Well, on one hand, for that roundabout at Country Club Parkway, because it's sort of 2 cities coming together, and Metro Plan as a regional entity likes to fund those sort of projects. On the other hand, we could apply to Metro Plan for our current plans of a roundabout, and they would like that because it's completely designed basically.
Are you referring to Club Manor?
Club Manor, right? So on one hand, we have an advantage applying for one because it's basically shovel ready and can rock and roll. The downside being that it then puts the other. We're not going to get Metro Plan money for both. We'd be lucky to get it for one, but. So my plan was to apply through Metro Plan for the other one. We basically have a pencil sketch of a roundabout, which is sufficient, and we can have the city engineer put together a quote on what the estimate of that sort of roundabout would cost. But if the council just said, hey, we really want to move this process along, y'all can, appropriate money to get started on the engineering. That would, of course, I think, improve our chances of getting that Metro Plan grant. It is prohibited to stand a foot away from the microphone. You have to come all the way up. So there's that.
Good afternoon, Alicia.
Name and
Gillen,
address.
68 Jasmine Cove. I think this conversation is actually most interesting because we're sitting here talking about an existing road and infrastructure and the what ifs. And what if we would have done something different a long time ago? What if we would have put in some different traffic measures? Because now we're sitting in trying to retrofit something. Where at White Oak Crossing, we have that opportunity. And how many times has Maumelle come down this road and said, God, 20 years ago, what if? What if we would have annexed, along Maumelle Boulevard? What if? You have this opportunity to be that game changer today. I've also looked at the agenda of some of the items that you've actually pointed out, Mr. Holt, is about strategies to attract small business and about the big box. Well, when they're looking at our region and they're looking at our traffic patterns and they're looking at our flow, one of the things they're going to look at is a stop sign. And they're going to look at how are people within the city of Maumelle going to make it to their business at the interchange. Is that going to be hindered by a restriction, or is it going to be a flow of traffic to get them in and out as quickly as possible? So again, you guys have an opportunity to really be on the forefront of this so we don't have to retrofit and stop traffic and impact residents and impact businesses in the future. So thank you.
I'm just going to hire her to say what I want to say.
I agree with-
Said it.
I agree with Chad that you have to be proactive and not reactive. If we wait until the traffic is there and people are going to want to use the road that we've provided for them, and now we've got to build a roundabout, now we've got to stop them and reroute it, and you're going to exacerbate the traffic problem if you wait until the traffic's already there. The sooner we can get started, the better. There's also that little half roundabout that's already there in the middle of the road where the gated neighborhood is and the big apartments.
Right.
It's not really a true roundabout, but it's in the middle of the road, and that needs to just be taken out regardless of building the other one in order to make flow. Coming back toward town, that's really quite a sharp little turn around there, and I guess our
does
fire
slow
trucks
down
would probably go around it if they had to, but
Not going towards the interchange, it doesn't slow them. Nobody yields.
I don't know what it costs to take
Because
that
it's
out,
straight.
but
If
that
you're
needs to
going
go
Towards the
anyway.
interchange, it's straight. If you're coming back towards Maumelle Boulevard,
There's a very
that.
slight
yeah.
curve.
We're talking about the one at the.
Salone?
at that little-
Salone.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it went all the way.
Well, so from what I hear you say, we've got, if you're going to apply for something from MetroPlan, we can either apply to have this one here retrofitted, but that might take away our chance from applying and winning the other one. I would be all for applying for the other one, but if it helps us to have the engineering done, I would be for getting to work on a design. But I don't know if that's putting the cart before the horse. Do we need to talk to the property owner and acquire the property?
I think
But
something we're gonna need to do anyway,
it's,
so. why
that
not
has to
start it?
happen in my mind. It has to
There have been
happen.
conversations.
Right.
Are you asking what conversations have occurred?
Well, I'm asking if
that.
if we ask for an engineering company to start drawing up design, should we have actually talked to the property owner and made arrangements to actually obtain that property is what I was asking.
Ideally, so we've reached out to the property owner there, and he's proposed a trade, and there are all sorts of ways to do it. If you look at Crystal Hill, for example, we still at this moment don't have all the rights of way secured, and we very well may not until we may have to come to the city council to ask if the council wants us to eminent domain a few little stretches or how we're going to approach that. So it doesn't necessarily have to occur beforehand, securing that right of way. But it is
Cleaner. I would
what's
think it
that?
would be cleaner to do it that way.
Cleaner and
get
perhaps far more expensive, but yeah, cleaner.
No, I mean to get talk to the property owner first.
Yeah,
before
that's
we-
what I mean.
far
So
more expensive.
Well,
I have an offer from the property owner that in exchange for the city accepting dedication for the streets and drainage, et cetera, in Majestic Point, which is currently all still developer owned, and in exchange for the city building and finishing out the sidewalks in Majestic Point, that he'd be willing to donate that property to the city at a certain valuation that also allows him a tax rebate for the donation. We have the city engineers given some preliminary costs on what it would cost to build the sidewalk, and it might be cheaper just buy the land, and that doesn't include accepting dedication of Majestic Point that needs to occur, but that hasn't happened for a number of reasons because there's been sort of a punch list, and it takes them from the city's perspective, and this is back in the Robert Cogdale days. The city would give a punch list of stuff that needed to occur. By the time they finally finished that punch list, the road had, there was now a whole new punch list of problems that had occurred, and so they're in this gradual fix something else goes wrong. That's a whole separate issue that needs to be addressed, because eventually those roads will be old roads, and if they're not dedicated, we'll be in a similar situation to maybe the Garden Oaks Alley issue 20 years down the way.
Were there not bonds on that? Have we not already accepted those
No, sir.
contingent? Majestic Point hadn't been?
No, sir. So the what we now do is we conditionally accept dedication of roads, contingent upon a few different things. In the past, they used to wait until those things were finished before they.
And so that's where we are, is on
accepted.
that deal.
But even if we had conditionally accepted it, one of the conditions is that sort of that punch list is completed, and so it would still be in purgatory, if you will.
Oh, my goodness. But at least the bonds would pay to fix it, right?
Well, the bonds aren't due. The bonds are just one of the steps. So, as far as I know, there's no bonds because there's been no dedication officially. But anyways, to going back, so there have been discussions about that. That was the first offer. The city can counteroffer. City can offer to buy it. There are all those things. I've been a little bit hesitant to do that because I don't know what the footprint of the roundabout is going to be. I've seen some sketches by people that are qualified to make sketches of roundabouts, but that aren't doing so currently as the city's not their client.
Right.
Sounds like our first step is to get that going then. Be like our project.
Well, yeah, so
Plan it out.
if you wait until after a possible grant, it's going to, one, slow things down, but two, maybe some of those costs will be paid for. An alternate path is do like we did currently for the current roundabout, which is an atypical way of hiring engineers to develop things. Normally, the engineering costs are sort of built into the overall project costs, and their fees are related to the cost of the project, as opposed to paying them by the hour to develop something or paying them by the step. But we could go ahead and get engineers to design it.
Did you say that
start
we
that
might
process.
increase our opportunity to maybe have it accepted by Metro Plan? That might give us better odds?
I think so. I think it would. So Mayor Watson was able to secure $1 million for the interchange project. That, as they were looking to spend money, they're like, "Hey, this project is going to happen." Whereas we've applied we just got the Edgewood sidewalks done, and it takes years, and they like to see progress, and so the further along we are, the better it is. But I don't know that there's a formula on that.
Well.
Sounds like our best option would be to start the planning of it at least.
Well, so if the council wants, I can get some quotes together, and come to the council with a mid-year budget resolution. We could do that fairly soon to start that project.
Yeah, that sounds like a good plan, yeah.
I would say I'm not quite as excited as jumping into it right now until maybe that thing's open and just see how it goes a little bit.
I'm afraid we're going to be ready to jam
yeah.
at that point, though.
But from what I understand, there's not even going to be a stop sign there. I think North Little Rock won't put a stop
No,
sign.
I'm talking about North Little Rock won't have to stop. I'm saying that, I'm laughing because
It's gonna be rough on Maumelle.
we got this new interchange and North Little Rock's got a
Yeah.
highway
Straight
to it,
path.
and Maumell's going to be the one stopping.
Yeah.
So,
What
yeah.
that traffic count say that the southern part of the Maumelle Boulevard has 53,000 cars a day going from Council Massey to 430, and a lot of that's going to be diverting over to White Oaks, and you may not be able to get from Maumelle onto that road with that steady
It's going to be
stream
a
of
difficult
traffic.
left-hand turn in the morning.
Right, so, exactly, that's when
Yeah.
we're going to need it the most.
And I want us
That's
to
why I
be,
think we need to kinda
yeah,
get
I want us to
this
be
sorted.
efficient with what we're doing. And I don't know if designing something before we have access to it all is the right way, but I just think we've got to move on that. I think
agree,
I think it's a priority for the city.
Yeah, because
So-
I think we're going to run into a real jam once that gets open, and everybody's going to be like, we paid all these tax dollars to have this access, and now I can't get to it because I can't make a left turn.
I guess one thing I'm saying too is that there's so many balls in the air from what the mayor was just talking about here as far as being able to get that land and everything else. Is just whatever he feels like's the fastest and most cost-effective way to go, just let him do whatever he's going to do.
Well, I think the fastest would be to hire engineers to start the project now, right? I mean, because there's going to be a design phase. The question then becomes if we're talking as though we're going to get Metro Plan grant I don't know that we
No,
will.
I don't know, but
But at the very
So we're
least,
gonna
I
have to do
think,
one way or the other.
yeah,
yeah.
it's,
I just, the only nightmare would be is if we start spending money and this thing opens and there's no problem out there, people are moving on just as easy as they want to. So,
Yeah, I wish that was the
No,
case, but yeah, I
it's-
just don't see it happening.
it's gonna be,
I mean, when you look at it, there's no way you can think there will be no problems.
Yeah,
It's pretty, it's,
North Little Rock's got that clear avenue, and everybody, Maumell's gonna be having to wait. I have customers who live out there, and they're like, "Oh, when are you guys gonna put that roundabout in?" Because they see that traffic there every day, and they're like, "This is gonna be a nightmare."
well, yeah.
well, we'll see. We won't have it done, so we'll have a chance to see, but I would rather have an engineer working on something.
have an answer.
And if we can get reimbursed by MetroPlan later, great, but if we can't, I don't think this cost is gonna be near what we've seen, or we'll see tonight, so I'm hoping.
Are we still looking at moving what is it, the pump
The
station?
pump station.
That's there?
Well, I've seen different drawings. Some drawings suggest that we have to move that pump station. Some suggest that we can design around it.
Can we make it a water feature
Yeah,
in the middle?
I'd go for that. Yeah.
A flowing pump station. So
When you start talking about expense, I mean,
Yeah,
that's a
it.
Oh, yeah.
significant, I mean, that's gonna put it in the same neighborhood, I would think, is the one
The
we're
energy
talking
thing.
about.
Don't know until
if
we.
not more, I don't know. But
And
yeah.
you've probably got
Don't know until we ask.
underground plumbing and pipes and things that you're gonna have to redo, just like here.
Don't know.
So it seems like there's a decent enough consensus that I should bring a budget resolution to the city council to consider for hiring an engineer. Is that what I'm hearing? It didn't seem like unanimous support, but
I just don't understand, if it's more appropriate to work with the property owner first, fine, I'm fine with that. I want us to do the smartest thing, but I just think the smartest thing is not sitting here and waiting until
Problem, yes.
November going, what's gonna happen?
Oh, we knew we should have done something about that.
Yeah, I'd rather have a design ready to go so we can do something.
Right, I agree. Did I say anything we'd want to take a vote in a brainstorming? It wouldn't be an
just-
official vote, just get an idea
Bill.
what everybody thinks.
I have this side of the table's opinion. I have both yours opinions, I think. Jess,
No, I agree. I mean,
you agree with
with proceeding to get this.
a budget resolution at least?
Yeah.
So another thing is if we think there's going to be a roundabout, designs of the roundabout are going to come eventually and don't occur overnight. Look how long the current roundabout has been under design at Club Manor. Okay.
Definitely need to get that rolling.
I think my preference at this point would be to not solicit money from North Little Rock for that engineering for a couple reasons. I think if we're already hitting them up for money on the Crystal Hill, there's a portion of Crystal Hill that is in North Little Rock. And I met with Mayor Smith, and North Little Rock will be chipping in about 90, 100 grand, I think, for that stretch of the road, and they'll have to do a budget resolution for that. It's in North Little Rock, but Mayor Smith has agreed to take it to the council, and then we are about to send them a bill for the adaptive traffic signals, which I don't think that they ever thought that they would have to pay that back in the day. What is that bill supposed to be, Scott? Is it 90, 85?
It's, total is, it's around 90.
Okay, yeah. So at this point, I'd prefer that the city just start the engineering. North of Rock on at least one of these issues is allowing us to send them a bill for money that we've already spent, but that covers their sort of pro rata share of the project. So I don't think that'll be a problem. But I can go ahead and do that. The next order, does anyone else want to talk more about the roundabout at Country Club Parkway, White Oak Crossing, Counts Massey?
Beat it pretty good.
Oh, we barely scratched the surface. But
We'll let you scratch the rest of it.
the next random item placed up here is continued discussions on annexation around North Maumelle. Mr. Gardner,
That
what
was
have
just
you to
mainly
say?
because we had a annexation committee that was meeting, and I don't guess they've had any meetings since last year at some point about the north end of town. And again, this kind of comes back to economic development. I would like to see that end of town flourish and because we've already got an interchange there, we already have interstate access, and so we don't have to pay anything for a new road. It's just a matter of helping that area grow. So I don't really have anything to say other than that. I don't know what all is involved with parcels of property that we may want to look to annex in, but that's just another avenue to help grow our city. So that's really
Well,
all
I have
wanted.
heard from, if not property owners, from people who in that area. Who, Birch, what would you like to add?
I'd like to add this, that on the north end of Maumelle, the 9 businesses, or 10, whichever it was, that we were able to annex coming through the back was all of them had sewer. And we got a 5-4 vote from the 5 businesses, and that was enough to bring them in. But then all the rest of them don't have the sewer. But we don't supply the sewer now anymore, do we? If we wanted to do something.
Well, we don't run a wastewater, if that's what you're asking. But I have learned, as city attorney, some of the things y'all did back when you were mayor, that where the city participated in sort of helping to build or extend sewer. Primarily, I'm thinking of the south end of town and out by First Security, and
Right.
and how the city chipped in some there. So it's not impossible to say the city couldn't help provide the facilities that would allow folks to tap into North Little Rock Wastewater Commission.
And actually, there are a few pretty good businesses out there. The big service station, a few things that could be brought into the city, and there's some that are not that great, but you could work around it, I'm sure.
Thank you, Birch.
So some of y'all have heard this. During the campaign, everyone was talking about investment in infrastructure. At least I was talking about it, so everyone must have been talking about it. I was originally under the impression that there was a wastewater shortage in some areas up there that were serving as a roadblock to development. What I have learned since then is that there might be more capacity than I originally thought, and or some of the properties up there aren't seeing that as a roadblock. Take, for example, that big area behind McDonald's. While there is no wastewater currently, when I spoke with a realtor, he said, well, that's not the holdup, because no one has even got that far enough to know that that wasn't that there wasn't wastewater. There hadn't been enough interest in the property to even get to that level of evaluation, at least as far as he was concerned. The north end of town, for annexation, the city doesn't have a whole lot to offer certain cities. I was talking to some folks out in Conway, and when you have your city water or city sewer, there's the adjoining property owners want to annex into the city to get city services. The city services we have are police and fire. Some people say code enforcement. Some people say that would be not a service. That'd be a detriment, depending on where you are there. The fact of the matter is, if there's a shooting or an emergency and the sheriffs ask for help, they get the police. If there's a fire in Oak Grove, ask for help, they're going to get our fire. What they don't get is the patrol and some of the other stuff. But we don't have a whole lot of incentive short of investing in that area, and trying to figure out what those investments are and what they need, and it is part of having a visioning process. And so what the Chamber of Commerce has been doing in conjunction with the city is trying to help that group up there get organized and put together a plan or a vision for that area, the types of things they're trying to accomplish, and then the city can facilitate that, and hopefully through that process recognize what investments the city may make, whether it's repairing roads, whether it's accepting dedication of a pond/lake, and a whole other host of things that I will let Miss Alicia Gillen explain.
We are very excited. A lot of the landowners up there see the need for future growth as well. And so they actually came to us at the chamber and said, we want to start start to having these conversations and being a part of the conversation and then leading that conversation. So we've had a couple of different meetings, and they've kind of loosely formed the North Maumelle Business Alliance. And what it is, it's those landowners, those stakeholders, and those business owners meeting together, having open discussions about what their businesses need and what their roads and the development needs for future growth. We have involved the city every step of the way in listening to what they have to say. So as they start to form that, and again, they are a very eager group of people up there, and we're very excited. The city's going to be involved in every step of that way, and we'll be presenting some of that information to you, hopefully in the months to come, because there is one of the things regarding wastewater is we've always heard that we were at capacity, yet no projects had ever been presented for us to get the no. So now we actually have some projects that are in, I believe they're in architectural drawings right now, that they will be presenting to wastewater, so we can actually get a true gauge of what our restrictions are, or actually our limit, or maybe even not our limitations for wastewater and for sewer in that area. So those are things coming on the
What
horizon.
businesses are we talking about?
How many?
Well, who are they?
They're all of them. So actually, we physically.
You've got McDonald's, Lake Liquor, all of them up there.
Yep.
Okay.
Quality. Every hotel that's there, every business has sent a letter, and if they didn't come, either we tried to reach out with them with phone calls, or they sent their commercial realtor for the discussion.
Including businesses that aren't there, maybe land interests that want to put
Right.
business.
It was not just existing businesses, but it's also landowners, some who are not currently within our city limits, and some who really want to be. So, yes.
So I got to attend CDI this year, Community Development Institute at UCA, which I'd suggest if any council members want to commit to
Ditto.
3-year.
Do it.
You just finished your 3rd year. Julia finished her 2nd. Rachel was there with me for the 1st year. I know Judy has gone through it. Scott, if you talk to him, practically ran it. No, he wrote the curriculum. No, he was involved. I think it's a great process, but it's a commitment. You have to commit a whole week, which means you have to be able to take a week off work. But one of the things is you're looking at these areas, and one of the problems that we've had, I met with one of the business owners in the north end of town, like right at the start of the year. And I said, okay, hey, I rolled out as much of a red carpet as the mayor of Maumelle has. We had staff assistant, economic development. I mean, we didn't have a whole, I don't have like the, much more of a red carpet to roll out for someone. And their complaints were, something needs to happen and you need to make it happen. And I said, well, okay, what? And they're like, we don't know. We just know this area is stale and stagnant. It's kind of that's the nice way of describing what happened. But when you go to CDI or you start looking at these areas that you have, whether they're downtowns revitalizing, it is not an entirely city-run process, whether there's downtown partnerships or business alliances, is you really need a champion for that area to help come up with the vision. I think one of my favorite lines from CDI last week was someone who said that everyone's waiting for them to go and do something, or the them and the they. And the fact of the matter is, if everyone's just waiting for the city to come up with plans on how your business can do better, we're strapped for resources. We're going 100 different directions. We need the people in that area to be their own champions, and for us to help facilitate that and work with them is what we're aiming for. So that all kind of ties into annexation. We don't necessarily want to just go grab one little property because it's sort of a short-sighted goal, and then we don't have a whole lot to offer that one property. Some of them would just love police to respond to their 911 calls instead of the sheriffs, because we tend to be closer, but others don't. And so we may have to do some and work with folks for some revitalization that says, hey, if you agree to annex in, maybe we'll help spruce up this street a little bit. We're already working on a few things like that. So it's a really big, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? I think we have more momentum going than in the past, but it's still a house of cards without glue at this point in time. So
Say one more thing. And not to exclude you by any stretch of the imagination, but we were very intent on making this led by them. And so that way, because we do know if we have more than one city council member in attendance or more than one elected official, it does become a public meeting. And as they are beginning to form these discussions, they're having some really honest conversations with each other, honest about the look and the feel of the Morgan Maumelle area. What is it being portrayed as? But what do they want for the future? So as we start to really develop these into great ideas and visionary processes, that's when we're really going to need your help and your support. Along with this, I would like to reiterate one point back. There is a private lake that is back there. It is about the size of Lake Valencia. We have added it to the City of Maumelle map that the chamber produces. So it is a chamber-produced map, and that landowner has decided to name that Lake Geneva in honor of her grandmother. So again, we can now boast that Maumelle has 3 recreational lakes in the future. So thank you.
And if anyone is in the leadership development program, that lake is very important for the scavenger hunt. Now, this went on a lot longer than I expected for this topic. That's really where I was getting with that. It wasn't all about annexation, but more of economic development and helping that into town. So anyway.
If you're talking about the sort of the northeast direction out toward the boulevard, the highway, that's one thing. The council, it will come before us. The Planning Commission has completed their work. There is maybe you all already know, the 128 acres on the old Maumelle Highway that there will be building. There'll be 192 new homes there. They will be drilling underneath the railroad track and the freeway, or the 365 for North Little Rock will have the sewer, and Central Arkansas will have the water. So if they are connected over on that side, perhaps it would be easier for them to, if we develop, annex anything, for them to be able to get those services. So, but they will never ever be annexed to Maumelle. They were rather blunt about it. Apparently, they don't want anything to do with Maumelle. So, anyway.
Who are you talking about?
It is the new development.
doesn't
It's
want
like
to
the
be annexed to Maumelle?
Woodlands Edge development.
Those folks are not necessarily opposed to being in Maumelle. Well, they're not contiguous for starters. But you might be able to find a way to make that happen. They, of course, want a gate that locks.
Right.
And under the current council climate, that it's not a good time to bring in a gate that locks.
Right. I was just listening to the council meeting, and I understood Mr. Neri to say that they absolutely didn't want anything to do with Maumelle, but I may be misquoting Mr. Neri.
Jim Neri, Director of Planning and Zoning. It's more like the mayor said. They are very adamant about having a private gated development, which under the design standards in that section of code, we don't allow right now. They also wanted their own design private streets. The design of the streets we don't allow right now. They wanted some cul-de-sac roads to be longer than 750 feet without a turnaround. We don't allow that either. So they asked for those variances from the Planning Commission. They received them. It's a unique situation in that the county will do all of the inspecting. They will give the approval along with us when the county's satisfied. Then I'll sign the final plat with them. We inspect nothing. We don't enforce zoning. We don't issue permits. We don't do code enforcement. We just do a little bit of subdivision regulation, and that's all. As the mayor said, they're not contiguous for one thing, but then when those lots start to sell, you've got a prospective 192 individuals out there to sign on the dotted line. I don't see that happening, even if they were contiguous. That's just my opinion. So.
I think you only need, oh gosh. Yeah, I was going to try and do the math, but no. So I had conversations with those folks very early on, maybe in February, and they were wanting to know if we could build them wastewater and sewer out there. And at that time I said, I'd much rather look at trying to get wastewater and sewer to commercial, not to residential development. And then they were concerned about if they annex in, you've got all our building inspectors, code enforcement, the building fees, all the stuff that tax on, and we couldn't come to an agreement. And we weren't contiguous, which would have been its own hurdle. But that's sort of residential development, I think, that I'd love to see in Maumelle. I mean, it is essentially what folks have been saying we need more of, but it'll now be in the county. But it's also a great example of why the decisions that we're making on some things are going to have impacts and things that we're not thinking about at that time, right? If that was broad and generic enough. But do we want to talk more about?
Let me ask a quick question. Who paid for that sewer and water to go over there to that development?
I believe they are, or I think they have an improvement district that will actually be funding that.
Okay, we're not.
I think it's a
involved.
current. Yes, we are not.
Not involved in any way. Okay, and I
Other
would
than
say,
encouraging that sort of development in or near Maumelle, but not
yeah,
to that level.
I've actually got maps of that new development right there on that table. If anybody wants to look at it afterwards, it's pretty impressive, really, for especially something outside of city.
So we can continue to talk about, and let me, so there's no, we're now at a minute or an hour into this meeting. I'm not trying to cut this off at any particular point in time. This is the council's meeting. I have on my calendar more time blocked off. But if we're going to continue on down this list at the rate we've been going, it'll be.
We'll be late tonight, won't we?
Before.
We might. We'll take a short
Time for the council
bathroom
meeting.
recess. So as y'all think it's time, a good stopping time, feel free to say so. If it looks like people are falling asleep, I'll mention. Yeah. But let's go on to the next one, which is promote a plan for. Some of these may not take as long. Promote a plan for all 8 council members to attend the Winter Municipal League Conference and a follow-up discussion afterward.
If we could bypass that one, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to talk about that. But I feel like since we have both chiefs here, the next one is create emergency contingency preparedness program with stored up supplies in case we get hit by a tornado, and then maybe ask for some. What did the mayor of Mayflower and Bologna? What did they thought? What wishes did they have when they got hit? What do they wish that they had that they didn't have? So maybe our 2 chiefs would have any advice or thoughts about, is it worth us trying to come up with some kind of a emergency plan in case we were to get hit? We've had 3 tornadoes, one around each side and one went over the top of us, so someday it's going to be our turn. What do we do if that happens?
Do either of you want to come up, or both of you? Or I know Chief Williams. Were you around for the Mayflower tornado, Chief Ezo? Okay, I know Chief Williams was and actually played a pretty instrumental role in some of their initial responses. The mic is yours.
You look really cute today, though.
Well, thank you.
This might be inappropriate.
For the record, that was Council Member Williams talking to her
Council
husband, Chief of Police Sam Williams. I gave the disclaimer for those watching at home.
We were there when the Mayflower tornado hit. I love the saying, and I say it all the time. Every plan's a great plan until the first shot's fired.
Yep.
And that's what we witnessed there. They had plans in place. And the first thing we recognized is that the communications was horrible. We actually set up 2, I don't know, they were some type of planning place. Our Mayflower had an ops center downtown. And we got there at the heart of the residential part of the tornado, and also where lumber 54, whatever it was, had been destroyed. And there were a lot of people there, and we're going to have to go house to house, but there was no op center there. So we set one up. And the Maumelle Police Department actually set that one up. And we had no way to communicate with the other people to find out there was one there. One of the stories that right off the bat, this big Winnebago that the state emergency management people brought in, they said, where's the operations center? And I said, well, one of them's right here. And he said, no, there can only be one operations center. There can't be 2. And I said, I understand what your manual says. We're in the middle of a tornado, and let me tell you what's going on. You got 2 op centers. Now, nobody said that's right. I'm just telling you what you got. We've got people all over these residents checking them for, let's face it, bodies and injured people. And I'm not going to pack all this stuff up and go. So we're going to have to use what we got right now and just get through it. We could have used a much better communication system, by the way, which we have now. AWIN and some other systems have progressed to the point where we can talk to each other a lot better than we did then. What we could have used, you could always use more people on something like that, but the coordination is important. And I think you saw a lot of that. What you'll see anytime you see a situation like that, you will see emergency medical personnel, police officers, and firefighters join together and just start doing. That's not ever the problem, is finding people that will want to help traditionally is not a problem. A lot of those folks are going to show up, and they always do, and most of them know what to do. What you got to do is coordinate it all. The one thing you can't live with is somebody in a house checking for victims and then the rest of the house cave in and you not know they're in there. If you've ever been through a tornado, you've noticed that the markings on the side of the house, all that means something. It means that there is somebody's been in it and it's clear. It means somebody's been in it and somebody's going to have to come get a body out of there at some point, but we're not going to do it right now. So all of those markings on the side of the house actually mean something to another first responder. So you just go and you do, and probably the first 24 hours is when you are in full scale mode to try to find survivors, and you're in a rescue operation. And then, as the fire department points out, and at some point you go to a recovery operation. But you don't do both very often at the same time. So that's kind of how that happens, and I think we're in good shape there. If we, or when, I guess some people would say, a tornado hits Maumelle, then you will have an all-call from the Maumelle Police Department. You'll have the police chief call the state police. Pulaski County, Little Rock will respond. North Little Rock will respond. You'll have agencies willing to help. We always do, and we always reach out to them. So, basically, coordinating it is the big challenge when it first gets started, because you're going to have a lot of people going a lot of places, and you're going to have somebody recording that and trying to figure out where you are and what you are. One of the first things I did at the Mayflower deal, there was this dispatcher who didn't even work. She worked in Faulkner County, but not in Mayflower. And she was there at the scene. And I said, "What are you doing?" And she said, "Whatever you tell me to do." And I said, "Well, then everywhere I go, you go. And you write down everything I say." And she said, "All right." So I would run into a couple of people and said, "Does anybody check that house over there?" I said, "No, go check it." Write down that they're going to check it. And we just walked around and made it up as we went as far as what areas we were going to check. Captain Pickard was in the, I forget the name of it, the newer homes down there. He picked up a guy from the state police, from somebody from Pulaski County, and two people from Faulkner County, and he started his door-to-door search and recorded who was where when the house had been searched to make sure we didn't duplicate efforts. That's one of the worst things you can do, is waste your time duplicating efforts. So we make sure that didn't happen. So you had several different operations going at the same time. I had no clue what was going on in downtown Mayflower, even though their chief had set up an op center there and was doing what he did. And we didn't even talk till, I guess, the next day. And he said, "Man, I appreciate everything you were doing." I said, "I didn't think you knew what we were doing." He said, "Oh, I didn't when it was going on." He said, "I just knew that there were people on that end of town and that it was being handled, and I was doing this." So there was some coordination going on without us even really knowing there was any coordination.
Right.
And you'll see that here. You'll see law enforcement and the fire department respond in incredible numbers, to the point when on September 11th in New York City, the New York City authorities had to actually send out memos to law enforcement agencies. Says, "Pray for us, send water, send something. Don't send people. We don't have any way of coordinating them anymore. We don't have any way of knowing who's where, doing what." So it is actually a bigger problem trying to coordinate all that than it is. We've got this right now, human resources wise. What we need is this, this, and this.
Here's a fun little story. When we knew the floodwaters were coming, which is different, that's in a very slow arrival. That's when you have time to prepare for. And I brought in fire, police, heck, Jim was there. Anyone that we thought would be at all related to the flood or the response recovery if we got hit with the river. I went in not thinking that everyone was going to be not thinking there would be pandemonium. And I remember midway through this meeting, I started to get afraid because we had places to take the bodies in the event that they were, bodies. We knew who was going to be hitting the homes with, who's going to be doing the recovery along the river, what the police and fire were going to be, where we were going to be staging, what our primary channels, communication channels, secondary. We were so well prepared in that instance that I left going, oh my gosh, if 10% of this is needed, then we are in much bigger trouble than I was assuming. But the ability for our first responders to organize, I mean, this is stuff they prepare for. I think there's always more room for improvement in these areas, but I walked in and out of that meeting going, okay, we're in safe hands. And it's not because of me, it was because of these guys out there and their teams. But Chief Ezel, did you want to add anything to that? That's a hard act to follow.
Well, can I just say one other thing on your list? As far as stockpiling supplies, that's handled by state agencies and other agencies. We don't need to do that here because everybody contributes to a localized version of that.
Okay.
So water, supplies, and all that kind of thing.
It'll come in.
That's already on hand if we need it.
Okay, good. I appreciate it, Chief. I've got something, I'll say it when you get done, but go ahead.
The only thing I was going to add to what Chief Williams was talking about is basically since day one when I got here, I started looking at some of the city facilities and the fact that we didn't have backup generators in a lot of them. Public Works was the big one because if we do have a tornado or some kind of an event, they have to be able to get fuel. We have to be able to get fuel. Public Works needs to be able to get fuel, and we didn't have that ability. We now have a generator there. I've also gotten one for the new Station 2 down there. We have one on wheels, and we also have an air conditioner. If we ever have to roll up an emergency shelter somewhere, we have the capability of doing that. But I mean, as far as preparedness goes, I mean, we're getting there. When we do the new city hall, that's still a contingency of mine is to try to get some kind of a backup generator because people are going to come to the mayor's office, right, wrong, or indifferent, and if he's in the dark, that's not good. The quicker we can get people back to some semblance of normalcy, the better off we're all going to be. They're not going to be, barking at you and barking at all of our folks as well. But and along the lines of what Chief Williams was talking about, night number one when Joplin got hit by the tornado, it was pretty chaotic. But night number two, when I came up and I ended up running staging and everything for the whole event, I had 650 engine companies sitting outside my door waiting to go to work. So as far as getting people to come in, there's not a concern about that. We had a contingency from St. Louis driving 4.5, 5 hours. We have Little Rock right down the road. I mean, it's not going to be long, and we're going to have some big, the USAR team is right here locally, so we're going to have help coming in here. The one thing that has always kind of bothered me since I got here is I kept hearing, there's a magic bubble around Maumelle, and I was like, I heard that for 20 years in Joplin, and on May 22nd, 2011, God burst that bubble in a big bad way. So, I mean, I didn't like hearing that. But, as far as preparedness here, police and fire, public works, we're good. We got this. If something ever, God forbid, ever does hit, we're ready to go. I'm not concerned.
Way back when Chief Glenn was here, probably 10 years ago, I suppose, he set up a class for CERT, Community Emergency Response Team. And for about 8 or 10 weeks, Chief Williams, I don't remember, you were here then, and it was every, I think, Thursday night, and we went through first aid, we went through how to use a fire extinguisher, they bought us backpacks and stuff, we had hard hats, we had the yellow jackets, we had the wrenches to turn off, showing how to turn off a gas meter. We had how to put out fires the right way. Don't spray water on it and stuff. So we went through every single. We even had the weatherman come in and learn how to sort of gauge the clouds and all kinds of stuff. But it was to where we would be in triage or direct traffic or whatever it was. We were there to just help. But it was every week that we would go through that and get certified. But so it was the individuals around the street, because they always said, take care of your own family first and then see about helping everybody else. So anyway, I just wondered if CERT could be reinserted again.
I have tried, that is actually a program I've tried to get back up and running at least 3 times now since I've been here. And it just, the interest just isn't there.
When we first started, it was over in the business offices way over there, and then we had about 50, 60 people starting out. I mean, it was a big room of people, but.
Well, I was at one point in time, I was a CERT instructor, and I will tell you that CERT kind of morphed into something that wasn't really the intent behind the whole program. The whole intent of CERT as a program was for you, if your neighborhood got hit, to go out and kind of look over things in your neighborhood. It was never meant to be any kind of a part of the police department or the fire department or anything like that. So, I mean, that was basically the deal. In fact, a lot of our wives, went through that class when we were teaching it, because, as everybody knows, and I'm sure it's the same way on the police department, the time that an emergency is going to happen at our home is while we're on duty at the station. It never happens when we're at home. So, I mean, my wife didn't know how to shut the gas off somewhere. She does now, but, I mean, she didn't have any idea how to do that if she had some kind of an emergency at home. But that was the basic intent of CERT when they first developed the program, was for people to take care of their own neighborhoods and take care of the people, along their street. It was never really intended to become, I ended up having some people start talking about, oh, well, if we notice this, we can dispatch truck 5 and engine 3. And I'm like, no, that's my job, not yours. Just let us know what damage you have. But, am I opposed to bringing it back? No. I mean, we could, get some people that wouldn't, with very little effort, could become CERT instructors, and we could teach the class again. But again, if we were to do something like that, the intent is for that to stay in your neighborhoods, not to become a part of us, because then you become kind of a hindrance to us if you try to get involved too much.
Right. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you, Chiefs.
I'll suspend if you would like to, Mr. Mayor. If everybody else needs to go, it's been an hour and 20 minutes, so we can continue at a later time, another day.
Thoughts?
I kind of agree with Jess here. I think we've been going out, and we've got a pretty long meeting tonight too. So anyway, I'd be ready to adjourn, and I would like you to add at the bottom of the list, for if we ever get down to the bottom of this list, would be to add impact fees on there.
Okay. We had originally put on the agenda the first time this came about, brainstorming sessions, plural, and Councilmember Holt promptly corrected us and said, oh no, we just wanted a brainstorming session. So unless or until I hear the council, either now or in the future, saying you want more such meetings, I think these sort of things can be helpful, if for no other reason than to catch y'all up on some of the stuff going on in-house, but also to get y'all's feedback. We can always schedule something like this.
Yeah, I'd like more. Once a month, once every 2 months, something like that.
I hear once a month or once every 2 months.
How about quarterly?
I think quarterly. Quarterly sounds good.
Quarterly.
Quarterly.
Or semi-annually?
Well, this was a start. I mean, I think we're sort of exploring, and it's a beginning, and we'll have, maybe get a little bit stronger in the next one.
I will add, my wife gave me instructions this morning. She said, y'all need to work as a team. She's like, y'all have got to find a way to work as a team. And I said, you were right, dear. You're always right. And so I think these kinds of things go to that to help us all understand where we are and get on the same page.
So when are we starting the softball team?
No softball.
All right, I'll go ahead and adjourn. We'll see y'all here in a few hours.
Appreciate it.